I'm Heather Coleman. In this day and age, it's hard to imagine life without cell phones and the internet. Reports in history can be read online. Research is rarely done by browsing a library or scrolling books. Now it is done by simply typing in your keyword into your Google information bar on the top left-hand corner of your homepage screen. Now there are cell phones with internet access and email on the go. Communication has changed dramatically over the past 10 years. Reading the daily news barely involves reading a hard copy of the newspaper anymore, but instead enjoying your morning brew staring at your family computer, or on your BlackBerry on your plane ride commute from LA to New York. Keeping your boss updated on your status has gotten easier over the years, all because of the internet and cell phones. But I want to take a few steps back and look at what used to be. How did this nation keep in contact with their bosses when they were thousands of miles apart 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago? Cell phones and email didn't exist back then. Instead, letters had to be written, and research was done through history books. So what made all of this possible? Well, before 1439, books were published by hand and were wood engraved. History was told mostly from stories by relatives or by the church. In Europe, the vast majority of people were illiterate, and they didn't even have a chance to learn how to read or write because of the lack of books in schools. In the early 1440s, Johannes Gutenberg had an idea that changed the world's communication and education forever. The printing press made it possible for the first book to be published using movable type. This was a much faster procedure to be done than by hand. Eventually, reading material was mass-produced in Europe, and books became widely available. The Bible was one of the first books to be produced in mass, and in the 1500s, the Protestant Reformation and Roman Catholic Counter-Reformation urged their followers to read the Bible for themselves. This made the vast majority of Europe go from illiterate in the 15th century to 90% literacy in the 18th century. People started to be inspired to move to cities for better work, and they were actually able to write their relatives to keep in contact with them. News was able to travel quicker than by a messenger, but through newspapers and stories published. More writers were able to document their lives to be published years later. Just think, Anne Frank's story wouldn't be known all over the world without the invention of a simple machine that made movable type possible. Mass production of the heart-wrenching story of the young girl that never gave up hope in time when all hope was lost wouldn't have been a required read in high schools all over the United States. The spark of an idea of mass communication over the World Wide Web would have never been lit without Gutenberg's idea to make reading easier. Books were used in schools as informative tools of education. Memoirs are read around the world and remembered years after their authors have deceased. It may seem like a stretch to think that the internet came from the printing press. But what man could have designed the internet without the ability to read in the first place?